Dawnbringer, Book 1, Chapter 2, A New Beginning and an Uncertain Future. Thick clouds of incense spiral and dance in the air, ever upward, from the coals burning in the bowls surrounding the altar as Eldarien prostrates herself on the cold stone floor of the temple. She inhales the strong and pungent scent, richness released through the burning flame of love, and thinks back on the path she walked to come to this place. And here she is, devoting her life now forevermore to the cause of eternal love, to the presence and work of the goddess in the world. The voices of her companions, the priests and priestesses of the temple, and the sages echo in song around her. And she lets go of the multiplicity of thoughts and memories. Instead, she tries simply to sink into the fullness of the moment, reverberating with an immensity of silent sound, made tangible in the voices surrounding her, and in the sweet scent of the motherly maker and caregiver, whose odour is made sensible in the inflamed substance rising to the heavens. Immersed as she is in the restful thought beyond words, she is stirred now by words spoken near her in a soft female voice.
Rise now, child of Ierendal, and gaze with eyes of heart upon the new dawn of life. Listen with ears of spirit to the voice of the Great Mother. Feel the intangible love and taste the sweet banquet of her benevolence, and speak back in response, if you truly desire this. You have heard, you have known, and now you dedicate yourself to her, and to bringing her light into the darkness of this world, where it is so forgotten and scorned.
At these words, Eldarien rises to her knees, and slowly and with a deep sense of intermingled gratitude and trepidation, raises her eyes before her to the statue of the Great Mother, the goddess of love, compassion, and fecundity, Ierendal. In a stance of undying receptivity, the goddess stands, with face wrapped upwards to the light and eyes gently open. But this receptivity of the Great Mother is also her benevolent generosity to all humankind, poured out through her open hands, palms upraised, as if offering, surrendering the gifts that she bears within.
Eldarien of Telmerion.
A male voice quietly begins.
You have been with us now for 2 years, and you have learned and progressed in the way of the Mother. Now we send you out to spread her light far and wide. Bring her always in your heart, against your breast, confident that knowing her is the greatest boon, and that one cannot share without this knowing of the heart.
With this, a man in dark robes approaches Eldarien, his aged face warm in the candlelight, his wrinkles deep and yet soft, and gestures for her to bend her head. As she does so, he slips around her neck an amulet, crafted with the image of Ierendal, a pattern of interlaced threads, conjoining in a way that the end and the beginning meet and are never parted, a sign that she is the interweaver of destinies and of lives, in love from the beginning to the end. The ceremony concludes with the voices of all being raised in song, giving voice to the words of an ancient hymn, a hymn mysterious in its depth and yet simple as all true wisdom is, given to the simple of heart. Ierendal, first and chosen daughter of Eldarien, come to us and show us the way that is good and true. Beyond the shadows and darkness of life, let us move free and joyful in the realm of light, pure and holy, and bring this light to every lost and hurting heart. And then in the ancient tongue, Ierendal, belia porain seka nu Eldarien, Seika ona kwailua koramon Eliaru, bena anoa yadira noa Eliana yafundala, medlur ya obscur surana pasa tratanoe, liene yahalane la regoen, sano yahasio, yadira anai la coranderen yaungden moen. After the ceremony is concluded, all of those present retreat to the atrium for a humble celebration among the twisting vines that clothe the wooden pillars and the gurgling water of the fountain in the center of the small but surprisingly spacious room. More songs are sung and numerous regional treats are offered to the guests, who are few in number but devoted. The town of Ristfand is home to numerous sprawling vineyards and farms of hollylock, and hospitable also to the cattle rancher and shepherd and the tender of Lana, a bird resembling a chicken, though with feathers of radiant colors and bearing eggs both larger and more frequent. Lying far in the southern parts of the land of Telmerion, the climate in this region differs greatly from the mountainous lands cradling her on the west, or the desolate and rocky lands to the north, where the hardy Telmerions nonetheless do not fail to help the land, to yield its fruit and sustain their humble way of life. Eldarien has been in this town for almost 3 years, since she departed from her family's home, nestled deep in the mountains of Yend to the west, where she grew up amid love and toil, amid poverty and the bounty of the land that sustained them, and the cold wind sweeping down from the mountains, and the family hearth that burned almost without cease to ward off the cold and to feed the family who would gather round it. She came with determined mind and heart and worked at the inn for close upon a year before being accepted into the temple of the Great Mother. And now, on this day, 2 years later, after so many joyful blessings and healing trials, she is eager to walk whatever path may be laid out before her. She may be young, not yet in her 26th year, but she has experienced and weathered much, and has drunk deeply since her youth of the wisdom of the land, whispering in her ears continually, and of the wisdom of the tender mother who speaks most clearly to those who are most humble.
Dear Eldarien, you have our congratulations and well wishes for you as you begin your new life,
says another member of the temple, with his arm interlocked with that of his wife.
Have you received word of where it is the Grand Master wishes you to travel?
I have not received word, Endric.
Eldarien replies with a bow of her head.
And thank you for your wishes.
I would hope you get to travel to the capital city of Brughill. It is exquisite. Perhaps if the Grand Master is not decided, I may suggest it.
Suggest it you may. But I am not looking for exquisite journeys. There will be beauty enough wherever I may be.
Ah, but none like the capital. You should see the great citadel of Myrion and the Temple of the Seven at its height. Nowhere in the world is there such masterful exhibition of the capable work of human hands.
Do not our traditions say that Neraniel prefers the beauty of nature to all the artifice of man, without despising the latter?
Of course you are right, young one,
replies Endric.
But our traditions also say that Neraniel is one of the divines, who has come to counteract the power of the fallen one. But other traditions say that she is a mere mortal, raised to the status of reverence by the divines, and favoured by them with a status not unlike their own.
I wish not to argue with you, my friend.
Eldarien responds quietly.
Some say that Neraniel is yet to come, and that our worship of her expresses but our longing for a gift yet to be given from the origin of all the divine and human orders.
Endric rejoins with very little kindness in his eyes.
And why would we worship what is yet to come as if we could know it now?
With this, and to Elmaria's great relief, Endric ends the conversation and turns, with his wife still silently beside him, to another part of the room and engages in other conversations. Always uncomfortable with crowds, particularly those in which she is a special participant, Eldarien herself withdraws to a corner of the room hidden in shadows, far from the central brazier that illumines the chamber. She has only begun to relax and to breathe more deeply, however, when the Grand Master himself, Syrian Loriez, a man of venerable stature with a long white beard and glistening blue eyes, approaches her.
I suppose that our friend Endric tried to suggest where I should be sending you,
he says quietly.
Indeed.
Eldarien replies, reminding herself that Cirion is the gentlest of gentle men, and that he wears the robes of his office with as much unease as many feel in his presence, until, that is, they truly get to know him and the grace and serenity with which he ministers to all entrusted to his care. He is not a man to lean on the staff of his role as if it gave him leverage over others, though in this respect he is sadly an exception among the order of the temple leaders, and often finds himself in conflict with them both in his personal behavior and in his inclinations for leading the direction of those in the care of the temple.
Well, I assure you,
continues Cirion, rousing Eldarien from her thoughts,
that I have not yet decided where I wish to send you. Your heart will be a gift to all with whom you come in contact.
Yes, Master.
You do not mind staying here in Ristfund for a while longer, do you?
No, I do not.
I expected as much.
Cirion replies, his eyes scanning the crowd of people filling the room, though somehow looking further, deeper.
Do you have a wish?
A wish.
Eldarien asks.
About where you would like to go?
Isn't that your decision?
Yes, but it is a decision concerning you, my child. Never let your service be merely a service of others. You must first live, and always live, in the fullness of your own heart. Only from the fullness of your heart can you give our mother's benevolence to others.
I haven't thought much about it.
Answers Eldarien quietly after a pause.
In fact, to tell you the truth, it is like my future is shrouded in mystery, and I cannot even make out the slightest path.
It is often so for all of us,
Cirion says.
but I must say that it is so for me as well, in your regard. I see nothing of what the future holds for you. The darkness surrounding it is immeasurably thick and obscure. I know not what to make of it. This is why I think it is important to wait, to listen for what may be unveiled before us with the passage of time.
Yes, I think that is wise.
Eldarien replies.
And I am willing to wait. I am quite content here.
Cirion chuckles softly to this remark.
Yes, I suppose you are. Though perhaps,
He continues, turning and looking into her eyes.
You would like to visit your family for a time?
Really?
Absolutely. If it is a wish of yours, I will arrange provisions and a horse, and you may stay for as long as you wish, or until something more is given us to know.
It would be a wonderful thing to visit, particularly this time of year.
Within a matter of 2 days, Eldarien is leading a paint horse by the bridle through the cobbled streets of the city, a small pack tied behind the saddle and another over her own shoulders. Her long auburn brown hair is braided back from her temple along the side of her head and tied at the back, falling rich and full down her shoulders. She wears a simple garb of tan, undyed woolen fabric, with a loose leather corset strung together at the front, and over it all a heavy fur cloak, pulled tight around her shoulders and almost sweeping the ground behind her as she walks. It is early morning, just after sunrise, and the streets are still quiet, with only a few labourers about their business, setting up stalls full of seasonal vegetables, salted and preserved meats freshly hunted or slaughtered, or handicrafts of wood, cloth, skins, or basket work. The hum of movement and conversation begins to break the quiet air of the night, though the latter still hangs about in the crevices between the tall wooden bunkhouses, lingering around the heavy stone of the abodes of the more well-to-do, and lingering especially in the simple and yet elegant structure of the Temple of Niraniel, which lies directly behind Eldarien at the rear of a court of smooth stonework, with a thin, cavern-fed stream flowing to either side, as it makes its way to a greater convergence to the south of the city, whence it flows into the sea. Ristfand is one of the only settlements in Telmerion that has still retained a semblance of normalcy and prosperity amidst the chaos of the civil war and the mysterious changes in the weather, in which a cold and wet landscape has become inexplicably more so, delaying the onset of spring now by 2 months and still waiting for the arrival of warmth and the blossoming of the first flower. Eldarien looks around and is reminded of this, as even in the beginning of the month of Meldrin none of the usual vegetables are for sale, but only the hardy and late-harvest potatoes and merry heather roots and a few carrots and lesser herbs. The people here have not yet known, nor are yet close to, the poverty of true famine, even if diverse supplies and goods, including foodstuffs, are more rare than they have been in generations. This is sadly not true for the smaller settlements to the north, west and east, in which the lives and material well-being of their people are so deeply tied up with the land and with the unpredictable changing of the weather and the other forces at work beyond human control and ken. If she is honest with herself, it is to places such as these that Eldarien would wish to go to bring the light of Niraniel. Places of poverty and hardship, of pain and suffering, of human want, crying out for the divine abundance. But she knows that her destiny is not in her own hands alone, and she awaits the Great Mother to show the way and to bring to flourish the good that she cannot bring about by her own efforts. And the larger settlements, cities they are called, though no community in Telmerion is much beyond a town, except for the capital city, Brughill, have problems of their own, often just as dire as the want for food or material goods. The 10,000 to 12,000 inhabitants of Ristfand, in fact, live in the orbit of a great spiral of injustice and thievery, either in participation in it or in rebellion against it, or, as in the case of most persons, in a blind-eyed tolerance to it, after years of long suffering and endurance of the corruption under the surface of the city. This injustice is not of the viscerally violent and murderously malevolent kind, as practiced by the marauders and brigands who roam about the land attacking and pillaging, but it is thievery and malice nonetheless. Relihim the brigands are called, in a derivation of the old tongue, and Eldarien has heard Syrians speak of those swimming the current of corruption under the apparently clean garment of the city as the Relihim of Ristfand, a fitting name and very telling, for even if the garment differs, the stench is the same. As Eldarien comes to the gate of the city, she turns back for a moment, her mind filled with thoughts of the goodness and beauty that she has encountered here, and yet also of the pain and human misery that are also here concealed, and the malice as well. She offers a silent prayer and sighs deeply from within her spirit. And with this, she lifts herself up and climbs into the saddle of the horse. Gripping the reins in her hands, she presses firmly against the horse's flanks with her knees and heels.
"Giddy up, Fenarion,"
and the horse responds by beginning to move forward, first at a walk and then at a gentle trot. Eldarien experiences its strong and muscular body move beneath her with such restrained intensity and majesty, and feels as if she is riding on the wind itself, or perhaps upon the very foundations of the earth, abiding in perpetual stability and continual movement. And even riding upon the wind itself, the journey home will be a long one, but she looks forward to it, as the rolling grassland cloaked in trees and heather, dancing and glistening in the morning sun, greets her in radiant beauty, and after that, the rocky hills await, in a gradual ascent to the lower step and jagged crags of the Yen Mountains. Eldarien prays for a safe journey, free from brigands and beasts, and feels a slight trepidation intermingling with her joy and excitement as she knows that she travels alone. In terms of weaponry, she is not heavily equipped. It is not her part to be so, and neither is she trained. A short bow is tied to the pack on the horse, and with it a quiver full of arrows, and on Elmarien's own belt a long hunting knife in a leather scabbard. In other words, she is well armed for killing, dressing and skinning a deer or other wild beast, but for little more than that. And this is only fitting, as it has never been the part of the servants of Ierendal to wield death against humankind for whatever reason, though fighting in self-defense is in no manner forbidden and left to the prudent discernment of each person. Despite the danger of the roads and the tumultuous state of Telmerion, Eldarien feels in the most part secure and at rest, and easily dismisses the slight surge of fear at riding home alone and unattended. She instead occupies herself with drinking in the sights and sounds she encounters along the way, more brown and lifeless than usual at this time of year, but beautiful nonetheless. For the trees dot the landscape with a kind of poetry, standing as silent sentinels over the earth, with their hidden roots plunging deep into her bosom and drinking of her life, and their branches stretched to the heavens, all the more expansively, the more they have allowed themselves to sink into the humble depths of the soil. Aspen, poplar, and beech, with a few large oak here and there, intermingle in great diversity, still mostly leafless, but majestic nonetheless in their nudity. And among these stand tall and wide the fully pine spruces and junipers, less in number but more vibrant in colour. Eldarien rides like this without stop until the sun is high in the sky and the air has warmed significantly, though without entirely dispelling the chill. This is not a bother, though, because the air is still and quiet, with hardly a whisper of wind, and the cold only enhances the sense of reverberating quiet that cloaks the land, and of the mysterious whispers of life that inhabit the woods and sing among the trees. Every now and then, the chirping of a small bird, or the calling of a lark, or even the deep voice of a moose is heard, breaking the stillness, or perhaps better, intermingling with it. The fullness of sound-laden silence makes Eldarien think that perhaps she is hearing some distant echo, however imperfect, of the silent song by which the Anian first sang Ierendal into existence. She dismounts from the horse in the early afternoon and ties him to the nearest tree by the harness. After this, pulling a satchel out of her pack, she makes herself comfortable at the foot of a large oak and begins to eat a simple meal of rye bread and goat cheese, with a few nuts. She cannot help feeling guilty for having enough food to eat when so many go hungry, and this, despite her teacher's continual insistence that she feel rather grateful, as the poverty of others beside her own sufficiency should not stir guilt, but rather thankfulness and compassion and active concern for them in their need. She doesn't quite understand, at least on the level of the heart, and can only give it up and stop thinking of it, as she has learned to do, indeed, with so many parts of life. There are many forces at work greater than the human mind can comprehend, and to try to fit them into the mind is an impossible task. But to stand before them in wonder or in lament, in contemplation and receptivity, does no harm, but is the very fabric of life and love. Thus she does not mind feeling guilty if it means her heart is still alive to her brothers and sisters, even if there is very little effectively that she can do for them. Hopefully, as time passes, she will learn of more that she can do. After her small meal, she takes a long drink from a water skin tied at her waist and cherishes the subtle leathery taste that it affords her, something that she has always liked about travel. Before rising and continuing on the road, she leans her head back against the trunk of the tree and closes her eyes. She hears, at first, nothing but the dense silence of the woods, interrupted only by the occasional chirp of birds, but after a few moments she hears also the distant call of a wolf, answered from a different part of the woods by another. The location of the two calls awakens in Eldarien a vivid sense of the wide space that surrounds her on every side, a sprawling lowland at the foot of the range of mountains, mostly flat but with some rolling hills and a few crevices in which trickle numerous little streams, as the land descends to meet the swelling sea that washes against the rocky sands of Nelson Bay. She calls to mind the simple farewells spoken this morning and the embraces of her two primary mentors, the young priest Ridri, his face only beginning to show signs of age, and the 80-year-old scholar Velia, her face clothed in wrinkles, and her hands too, like the land's surface covered in valleys and rivers and deep furrows, but still able to hold a book. Their eyes look out at her even now, glistening with a gentleness that she has come to know and love. Her companions in the order had also been present at the sending off, many still dressed in their night garments, with bedraggled hair or with a nightcap still tied around the ears.
"We wish you well on your journey,"
Ridri had said.
"and a safe return. May you find your family well and your time with them a blessing."
Velia had handed Eldarien a small item wrapped in paper and tied with string.
"This is for your parents. Give it to them as a gift from us upon your arrival."
And with a glisten in her eyes and a subtle smile illuminating her face.
"This is for your siblings."
Eldarien had laughed as the old woman placed into her palm a handful of sweet candies made from distilled tree sap, clove and cinnamon, the family's favourite she had once mentioned offhand over a year ago in a conversation.
"You remembered,"
she had exclaimed. Velia just smiled and said,
"It is important to remember the littlest of things, for sometimes they prove to be the greatest or a doorway to that which is truly deep."
"Thank you very much, all of you,"
Telmerion said, and looked into the faces of all around her before turning away for her departure. With the emotions stirred from these memories, Eldarien returns to the present and opens her eyes. The sun is peeking from behind low-hanging clouds and casting a golden hue over the dry landscape. Fenarion neighs restlessly in his harness, ready to begin again.
Yes,
Eldarien says.
"We have rested long enough. Let us go."
She unties the horse and swings herself back into the saddle before setting off again to the west-northwest. It is only a matter of an hour or two before she sees the land begin to rise before her, and beyond that, the peaks of mountains standing like sentinels at the meeting of earth and sky.